The title of my message is When I Can't See. So how are you doing? You know, that's a common greeting, common phrase that people, you can respond in many ways when someone says, how are you doing? The most common response is, fine. Or people might say, great. Or, God is still good. Or I had one friend, this lady that lived overseas, and whenever you would talk to her and ask her that, oh, how are you doing? She's like, I'm blessed and highly favored. Like, that was her thing. It's like, oh, that's a new one. Okay, that's kind of cool. But sometimes people will just be like, oh, okay, And, how often do you answer that that question in a deeper way? How often do you answer? I mean, if you share your true deep feelings and issue when someone asks the question, how are you doing? It usually is because of the relationship that you share with the individual who asked, or it is because of desperation. What I mean by desperation is that you have such a need for help, like such a need for connection, or such a need to be heard and understand, that you take down your walls and you open up to a person despite how close you are to that person. So today I want to share a story with you about a desperate man. So it's not going to be the exact story from the cartoon, but it's kind of going to be related. So in Mark chapter 10, starting in verse 46, it says, Then they came to Jericho. As Jesus and his disciples, together with a large crowd, were leaving the city, a blind man, Bartimaeus, was sitting by the roadside begging. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Then he rebuked him and told him to be quiet. But he shouted all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. Jesus stopped and said, Call him. So they called to the blind man, Cheer up, on your feet, he's calling you. Throwing his cloak aside, he jumped to his feet and came to Jesus. What do you want me to do for you? Jesus asked him. The blind man said, Rabbi, I want to see. Go, said Jesus, your faith has healed you. Immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus along the road. One of the things that I love about this story is that when you look at this blind man, when you look at Bartimaeus, you realize a few things. Number one, he didn't care what anybody else thought. They tried to tell him, hey, be quiet, hey, just, kind of mind your own business type thing. But he didn't care what people thought. He was going to get Jesus' attention. He was going to shout. He was like, I don't care, Have you ever had that where your kids are shouting or someone's talking loud and you're like, shh, quiet, come on. I know I have done that many times with my kids. And so, people were like, hey, quiet. And he's like, no, I'm going to shout louder. I got to get his attention. Number two, he needed a miracle. This blind man needed a miracle. He couldn't see. And then number three, he believed. He believed. It says, go, said Jesus, your faith has healed you. He believed. And one of the things that I think is interesting also about that story is that Jesus asked him, what do you want me to do for you? Or what do people just assume, well, of course, I want to see, But Jesus asked him, he made him share what he wanted, what it is that he was asking Jesus for. So I want to continue down this topic of when I can't see. So we have more input today than ever before. We can know what is happening around the world in a minute. This can be great if you're video chatting with a friend or family member from around the world. I know I appreciated it when we were living overseas and being able to do the video chat and instantly. But this can also be overwhelming to us in our daily lives. If we read, watch, and listen to the news, we are hearing about, you think about it, we are hearing about death every day, right? If you listen to and watch the news and you read the news, every day you'll hear about death. You'll hear about conflict every day. You'll hear about problems every day. So this kind of, if you look at this kind of gets to the point of information overload, right? The definition of information overload describes the excess of information available to a person aiming to complete a task or make a decision. This impedes the decision-making process, resulting in a poor or even no decision being made. Another way to describe that is the analysis paralysis. I don't know if you've ever heard that before, but I got some of this from this article by Georgina Guthrie. She wrote about this analysis paralysis and said, when we overthink a situation to the extent that stress kicks in, and we can no longer make a sound, rational decision. It's that very same flight or fight response that makes our minds go blank. So when you're thinking about this analysis paralysis, number one, overthinking kills performance. Number two, stress lowers creativity. We're at our most creative when we're completely relaxed. You guys realize that? It's really interesting. It's why writers, songwriters, entrepreneurs, they have a notepad by their bed, because usually then the best ideas come to them when they're kind of like switching off their brain, when they're kind of relaxing. And number three, overanalyzing makes us indecisive. So I have some examples of that. Like sometimes if I ever have a free day and I'm trying to decide what to do, sometimes I get overwhelmed by all these things that I can do. It's like, I could clean this room. I could organize my computer files. I could do this. I could go here. I could go buy these things that I need to do. There's all these things that could come at you, and then all of a sudden you're over halfway through your day, and you're like, oh, what? You finally get started like an hour before the end of your free day, and you're like, oh, whoops, I lost my whole free day because there's too many options. Or have you ever gone to a restaurant and it's a large menu, and it's not a restaurant you're familiar with either. Like, and you go out to eat, especially with somebody that is familiar, and you have this like 10-page menu, and it has everything from tacos to fish to burgers to lasagna. It is everything under the sun, and you're like, I don't know what to get. There's just too much overload. I had a friend that overseas, she's from Asia and she's married to an American, so they came back to the U.S. and she went to a restaurant and they're like, oh, what do you want? And she kind of pointed to something on the menu and said like this, and like, okay, well, would you like a soup or salad with that? She was like, trying to figure out what they're saying. And she said, okay, I'd like, a soup. Well, what kind of soup would you like? This, or this? And it was like, okay, I guess this, and then okay, would you like cheese on that? Would you? You realize the amount of options that can come at you can become overwhelming, and it can make your brain actually shut down. They actually say when you're making decisions, it's usually much easier when you decide between like two things. It's like this or this. It's like, okay, I like that. Versus if you have an option, if you have 20 options, sometimes it can just overwhelm you to try and be able to handle that. You think about, like, have you ever used like when an old phone or a computer and can't handle like the new game that you're playing, or it can't, or it takes forever to load a web page, because that technology wasn't designed to handle that amount of input. If we tried to do some of the things that we do now on old phones or old computers, it wouldn't work. It just won't be able to process it. And you think about our brain is phenomenal. It's capable of so much, like it really is. But as the discussion about, this information overload, analysis paralysis, as it shows, it's not designed to handle too much input at one time. So we have access to more knowledge and information than ever before. You can, I don't know if anybody's ever done this, but you can go on YouTube and you can repair almost anything. If you ever, like, I know I did that before. I was like, how do I replace a light bulb in the car, like in the headlight? Because it's not, it's not simple anymore. You got to go up this way, that way. It's really complicated. And I looked up and it's like, okay, it shows the make and model and it shows a video of how to do it. And I was like, awesome. You can do that for almost anything now. You can just go online for like, okay, how do I fix this? How do I do this? You just put it in and you just watch the video and you follow along. And it's incredible. You can download thousands of books onto your Kindle and have enough reading material for a lifetime. It take a matter of minutes to do that. So you can use technology to accomplish things in a fraction of the time that it used to take. So then, is there a problem today? Are kids that are growing up today accomplishing 10 times as much due to the information they have access to? Ooh. So, some would say yes. Some would say, oh, look at the new technology that's coming out, or the breakthroughs that are happening in science, the global infrastructure that's growing. Look at you look at all these advancements, and we are accomplishing more. And then others would say, no, kids spend more time on TikTok and Snapchat watching videos and sharing posts than learning and acquiring lifelong knowledge. You can, kids and young people spend more time, some people would say, wasting their brain power on learning the latest video games and the newest video game. But one of the issues that young people do face is, how do I leverage this access that I have to all this knowledge into true learning? How do I do that? So you guys might be wondering, how in the world does this relate to when I can't see? How does this relate to this topic? Well, just like the blind man couldn't see and had to beg on the street, to eat. Sometimes we can't see as well. He couldn't see physically. And so he focused on Jesus. Like, if you look at that, like he had a limited input. He had a limited scope because of his blindness. So then when he heard about Jesus, all of a sudden he reacted to that. He focused on Jesus. And so sometimes we can't see as well. Sometimes when it comes to our life, like, we have to make time for moments with Jesus. We have to truly focus on him. Have you ever had a conversation with your spouse or your kids, but you're on your phone or you're watching TV or you're on your computer? So I should say, have you ever had your kids or your spouse try and have a conversation with you when you're on your phone, computer, or watching TV? And, sometimes the conversation, they could say, I'm going to the moon, and you'd be like, yep, I'll be right on that. Sometimes you're not always in that conversation, and sometimes they'll look at you and they'll say, are you listening to me? What did I say? Anybody ever get caught in that? Anybody ever have that conversation? What did I say? And then you try your best to repeat what they said or to remember what they said. You have no clue, but you're like, I think they said this word last. And you just, you try and guess what they say. You just kind of like put this out there. Oh, I think this is what they said, and that usually doesn't work. Then they kind of get more angry, and it's like, just like, so our family members, a lot of times they want our attention. You guys ever think that sometimes that Jesus is like that? That he's like, I want your attention. When people want our attention and want to have a conversation with us, they want our full attention. I mean, sometimes they don't care. Sometimes we're just, we've all had those moments where we just want to say something and it's not a serious conversation. We're just talking. We might be like, oh, isn't this pretty beautiful? And the person could, be doing something else, and it doesn't really matter. But there's those moments where you want their attention. You want to have a conversation with them. And Jesus wants that with us. He wants to have a conversation with us. He wants to meet with us. He wants to have our attention. And so just like your family members sometimes want and need your attention, Jesus also desires our attention. He desires us to take those moments and say, all right, I'm going to get these distractions away, and I'm going to take some time and focus on you. I'm going to take some time and think about you. The dangers of taking your eyes off of Christ. You look at Peter getting distracted. Matthew 14, 28 through 31. They talk about, Peter answered, this was when Jesus was walking on the water. And Peter answered, Lord, if it's you, order me to come to you on the water. And Jesus said, come on. So Peter got down out of the boat, started walking on the water, and came to Jesus. But when he noticed the strong wind, he was frightened. As he began to sink, he shouted, Lord, save me. At once, Jesus reached out his hand, caught him, and asked him, you who have so little faith, why did you doubt? Because Peter got distracted. When Jesus told him, come walk towards me, Peter got distracted. He stopped looking at Jesus, and he started looking at the waves around him. You look at, in Luke 10, 38 through 42, you look at Jesus and his disciples were going to Jerusalem, in a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. Her sister Mary sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he taught. But Martha was distracted by the big dinner she was preparing. She came to Jesus and said, Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits here while I do all the work? Tell her to come and help me. But the Lord said to her, my dear Martha, you are worried and upset over all these details. There is only one thing worth being concerned about. Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken away from her. It's like that is good. I know when I'm thinking about all this Christmas time, December is one of the busiest months. And for me even more so, my birthday's on Tuesday, Sorry. I'm not turning 40 like last year, so it's not quite the significant moment. But December is a busy month. It's all like, okay, we got to decorate. We got to decorate inside. We got to decorate outside. I got to get presents for this person, this grandkid, this kid. Okay, what are we doing this year? Are we doing a gift exchange? Are we getting presents for everybody? Okay, where are we celebrating Christmas here? Are we doing this there? And there's so many details. There's so many things that are coming at you from every angle that sometimes it's hard to step back and focus. Sometimes it's hard to step back and say, all right, Jesus, I want to focus on you right now. I need to have that moment. I need to have that moment where I can just think about you, where I can just dwell in your presence, where I can let all these details go to the side for a moment and say, all right, I need you. In Romans 12:2, it says, do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. I love that because it's talking about how we got to transform our mind. And sometimes when we get caught up in the world, sometimes when we get caught up in busyness, sometimes when we get caught up in life, our mind gets jumbled up, our emotions get jumbled up, and we need to be renewed by God. We need to be renewed by him. In Proverbs 4:25, it says, let your eyes look straight ahead. Fix your gaze directly before you. Because there are many times when you can't see. You can't see where you are going in life. You can't see if your health will hold up for the next year. You can't see if your marriage is healthy. You can't see if you're raising kids in the best ways. You can't see the future. But focus on Jesus because he is the one who sees. He is the one that heals blind eyes. I was looking for a specific story about this pilot. There's this really amazing story. This pilot needed to land and, was running on fuel or something like that, and the lights turned on just in time for him to land, and, that person was showing, I don't know if you guys have heard this story before, but this person was showing someone about the lights, and they're like, oh, and see, this is how you turn on the runway lights, and, head it on for 10 minutes, and then turn it off or something like that, and at that point, that's when the person landed. And it was just like an amazing story about, to illustrate this point. But I couldn't find that specific story. I looked and looked. I knew that story. I heard. I was like, where is that story? So I was starting to look up, these stories about these pilots, and I came across this other story that is perfect to describe this topic. And it said Henry Gardner was flying to Asheville, North Carolina, in his Cessna 180. We'd taken off from Victoria, Texas, and stopped in Jackson, Mississippi to fix a malfunctioning radio. Now we were nearing Asheville, only to find that the fog was so thick that the controller wouldn't let us land. Sorry, he said over the radio, you'd better head to Greenville. But we couldn't. We didn't have enough fuel to make it there. We're going to have to land, Henry insisted. We were granted permission to make an emergency landing. The radio sputtered a few times, and he lowered the plane. Pull it up, came the shout. To our horror, we saw we were about to land on the interstate. Henry pulled hard on the stick, and we barely missed a highway overpass. If you listen to me, the voice on the radio said, I'll show you how to get back in. Then came a series of careful, detailed instructions. Raise it up. To your left a little. Easy, easy. You're nearing the runway. Let it down now. Suddenly, the lights of the runway appeared out of the fog. Never had I seen such a welcome sight. We landed safely. First, we thanked God. Then, as soon as we could, we went to thank the air traffic controller, who looked at us in bewilderment. I don't understand, he said. I lost contact with you after I told you to make an emergency landing. The radio sputtered, and you were gone. I was like, listening to that, and I was like, wow, it's incredible, like how God provided, how God navigated in the midst of that situation. And sometimes we can't see in this life. Sometimes there's things that we don't know. We don't know all that tomorrow is going to hold. We don't know like what's going to happen over this next year. We've seen in the last 2 years, as far as the instability of life, the instability of just of everything in this world. But the one thing that we know is that we can trust God. We know that we can rely upon him, that he is our rock, that God sees even when we don't, that God sees us, that he sees the path before us, that he can help us in each and every moment of the day, that when we are going through catastrophes in our life, when we are going through tragedy, when there are things that are happening that are unexpected, that we can trust in Jesus, that we can trust him, that he's going to light the path, that it might just be he might be like, this in this situation where it's like, all right, go up, go to right, left a little bit, all right, slow down. It might be just one thing at a time. It might be like, okay, today, just take this next step. Today, I want you to read this verse. Or today, just take 5 minutes, and I just want you to dwell on this verse. Or I just want you to spend some time listening to me. Or it might be something where he gives you this song, this worship song to listen to. And you go online, you pull up this worship song, and you listen to it, and God just speaks to you like that. And your perspective changes, and he begins to lead and guide you. That's the thing that's amazing about when we get to the point where we trust God, where we truly put our trust in him. It's not easy, especially for those of us that like plans. We like to have everything laid out. And God works through plans. God works through those situations. I'm not saying that he doesn't. He does. He gives us wisdom. But he also, more than anything, wants us to trust in him. He wants us to follow after him. And if we're not listening to his voice, we can't follow him. So we must listen to his voice, and we must keep taking those steps and saying, all right, God, what is next? How am I going to get through this day? How am I going to get through this week? We have to take those times to be in his presence. So let's go to the Lord in prayer today. God, thank you so much for your love. Thank you for your grace today, Jesus. I pray that we would put our trust in you, put our faith in you. God, I pray for those right now, if there's anybody in this building today that needs a miracle from you, Jesus, I pray that today that they would receive that miracle. And just like Bartimaeus, who said, Jesus, I want to see. I pray today that that we would cry out in those areas, that we would come to you, God, and we would share our heart of the miracle that we need today. That we would open up and we would share that, and we would trust in you. Jesus, I pray for those in their heart today that are struggling through this time, for whatever reason, that they're just struggling right now. Maybe they can't even put a finger on why. God, I pray that you would enter into their heart right now in such a powerful way, that you would bring them a sense of comfort, a sense of peace, and a sense of trust in you, that you've got them in your hands. You've got a purpose, you've got a plan, and they can just trust in you. God, I pray that you'd speak life today into each heart here, that you speak hope. Thank you so much for your love. God, I pray that we would see Jesus clearly. That I pray that we would see you clearly, Jesus. That we would see your love for us. That we would see what you have for us. Thank you, Jesus, for this day that you've given us. Thank you for this month that we get to celebrate your birth, Jesus, that we get to celebrate what you've done for us. Thank you, Jesus, so much for everything that you are and everything that you're doing in our lives. Amen.